Oops. Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Random School Projects, episode 4. And today we're going to be talking about transgendered athletes. Transgender athletes have been a controversial topic lately. The rise of the LGBT community and President Joe Biden's Equality Act that the Democratic Party is trying to pass in the United States. In 2011, a transgendered man named Chris Mosier, who was born a woman and transitioned to a male, ran the Nautica New York City Triathlon in the men's division. And in 2015, made the U.S. men's national duathlon team. Not many objections were raised to this, as it was a woman transitioning to a male, which was looked at as a disadvantage. He was putting herself at a disadvantage. The first person to transition from a male to a female was a man by the name of Renee Richards, who switched from a man to a female and then started to play tennis in 1975. He tried to go into a warm-up tournament for the U.S. Open, and then the female competitors withdrew their protest, and later she was banned by the U.S. Open, which led to a lawsuit later in 1977. The issue at the time sparked massive controversy that is still present today because of the biological advantages that men have over women in terms of physical ability in sport. My aim for this video is to give you the unbiased facts and evidence about transgendered athletes. To understand the reason why this is such a hot button issue, we have to understand first that why women's sports was separated from men's sports. The physical differences between male and female depends on the body parts involved, health, and the sport in question. On average, women's muscle accounts for 30 to 35% of their body weight, while men's muscle mass accounts for 40 to 50%. Consider that the Canadian man, on average, is around 187 pounds and 5'9", compared to the average Canadian female, who weighs 155 pounds and is 5'3". And the disparity between muscle mass becomes very clear. So basically, men's muscle mass would be around 90 pounds on average, and women's muscle mass would be around 50 pounds. So that is quite a difference. However, it does change depending on what body part you're talking about. Women on average have 66% of the strength that men do in their legs, compared to only 50% of the strength that men do in their upper body. Also, in terms of bone structure and bone density, men also have the big advantage. Men have a higher bone density, amount of bone materials in the bone tissue, so the bone is just stronger and more durable. So they have stronger bones in the joints and more developed bones in the joints, and their bones are just bigger and thicker because the men are bigger. If we look at the respiration system, the male lungs are larger because on average men are larger, thus allowing for a greater intake of oxygen to power the muscular system. Larger lungs are huge, like in oxygen intake in particular. The drug that Lance Armstrong used to win his 7 Tour de France's, he won those because he was taking a drug that basically increased the amount of oxygen you could take, and no one could compete. Men also tend to have faster natural reflexes and better natural hand-eye coordination. However, those skills can be improved with practice. It's not a very accurate metric, but on average. Now, there's some different physical advantages that women do have over men. In a study done by Clearview Health, they determined that women's ability to recuperate their energy and strength after maxing out their abilities were significantly better. So basically, the study was they had men and women max themselves out physically by doing some sort of physical test, and then they gave them a short break, and they had them do the same stuff again. After a short rest, the women were able to output 73% of their original power and 83% of their original torque, compared to men who only retained 59% of their power and 72% of their torque. In men, out of the 5 major athletic areas: power, speed, endurance, agility, and flexibility, men on average are take power, are more powerful, they're faster, they have a lot better endurance and have better agility, while women are just take flexibility. They're more flexible on average. Of course, these are all something to note about these differences. They can be improved, and these are just averages. With the top through, with the muscle mass, the respiratory system, and the bone density and structure, that can't really be improved. That's just a natural advantage men have over women. However, the other ones, such as power, speed, endurance, agility, hand-eye reflexes, hand-eye coordination, those can be changed. They can be easily brought up to the same level, or I guess maybe not the same level for power, speed, and endurance, but for hand-eye coordination and reflex is for sure. And flexibility, I guess men could get up to a women's level if they really tried. Now, if you add these things together and look at the sports, you can see why the number of muscles that are involved and which muscles are being used have a profound effect on the differences between women's sport and men's sport. The world record time for the 100-meter dash in the women's in women's is only a second and a half behind Usain Bolt's fastest time. So that's a pretty small margin, really. It's very small. However, if you look at basketball, let's just take a metric. Only 7 women have ever dunked in the NBA, or in the WNBA rather, and their dunks happen on clear breakaways and no one around them, or at All-Star games. And then you look at the NBA, and an average 6 dunks a game, and they're more integrated into play and much more powerful. So and dunks are more, I would say they use much more muscles and much more upper body strength than sprinting. It just takes more muscle in sprinting. Your overall athleticism than sprinting. So to conclude this segment, women do have some advantages in athletic ability. However, males do dominate in most categories. The NCAA, so that's the National Collegiate Athletic Association, so that's the governing body for college sports, has this policy for transgender athletes. Quote, a trans female, male-to-female student athlete being treated with testosterone suppression medication for gender identity disorder or gender dysphoria and or transsexualism for the purposes of NCAA competition may continue to compete on a men's team, but may not compete on a women's team without changing it to a mixed team status until completing one calendar year of testosterone suppression treatment. A transgender student athlete who is not taking hormone treatments related to gender transition may not compete on a women's team. So the International Olympic Committee's policy on transgender athletes are as follows. Quote, those who transition from male to female are eligible to compete in the female category under the following conditions. The athlete has declared that her gender identity is female. The declaration cannot be changed for sporting purposes for a minimum of 4 years. The athlete must demonstrate that her total testosterone level in serum has been below 10 nanomole per liter for at least 12 months prior to her first competition, with the requirement for any longer period to be based on a confidential case-by-case evaluation, considering whether or not 12 months is a sufficient length of time to minimize any advantage in women's competition. The athlete's total testosterone level in serum must remain below 10 nanomoles per liter throughout the period of desired eligibility to compete in the female category. Compliance with these conditions may be monitored by testing. In the event of non-compliance, the athlete's eligibility for female competition will be suspended for 12 months. And this is the policy for transgender students by U Sports Canada. So that's the governing body for university sports in Canada. Effective immediately, effective immediately, U Sports student athletes will be eligible to compete on the team that corresponds with either their sex assigned at birth or their gender identity, provided that student athletes complies with the Canadian Anti-Doping Program. The new policy was developed by the U Sports Equity Committee in consultation with the broader U Sports membership and approved by the U Sports Board of Directors. In all cases, trans men are allowed to compete in male sports without restrictions. So that's female to men. This debate on transgender athletes has been rekindled lately due to the Equality Act being put forth in the United States by the Democratic Party and Joe Biden. This bans all kinds of discrimination based on gender or gender identification. The bill has good intentions. However, the bill allows transgender girls to play against biological girls in all levels of competition. In high-level competition, a transgender woman must go through hormone therapy in order to get their testosterone under the 10 nanomoles per liter limit. However, this only brings the overall athletic ability down 5% on average. Testosterone is a hormone in men that affects muscle and bone mass, how men store fat, and men's red blood cell count. Women do have some testosterone, but not nearly to the same degree as men do. On average, a male athlete will have anywhere between 20 and 30 nanomoles per liter, where women athletes only have 1 to 3 nanomoles per liter on average. However, if you look at sprinting example, a 5% decrease in speed for Usain Bolt would put his world record time at 10.05 seconds compared to the female world record, which is 10.49 seconds. So that's not a big difference. However, if you look at the muscle mass statistics that I outlined above, men will still have a significant advantage in the lower and still a massive advantage in the upper body in terms of muscle mass. This hormone therapy brings male performance down certainly. However, male athletes will still have the edge over the female athletes. Now, if you look at unregulated athletics, we see another problem. At state and high school recreation and some college levels, there have been many issues with trans women because there either is no hormone therapy required or it is not enforced. This has led to many men transitioning and deteriorating women's high school, college, and recreational sports. In 2019, a trans woman by the name of Cece Telfer broke the women's college record for the 200 meters and the 400 meter hurdles. She was on a hormone therapy, however her levels of testosterone were reported higher than the 10 nanomoles per liter requirement that the NCAA requires. A more dangerous incident is females withdrawing withdrawing from competitions due to trans women who are not on hormone therapy, who have the muscle mass of men in boxing and wrestling, causing some gruesome injuries, and the women who do enter the ring often with significant injuries. Rules vary by state and organization, as most follow IOC, so International Olympic Committee, and NCAA guidelines. However, there are some exceptions. This is obviously before the Equality Act goes through. The Equality Act
probably won't get through because it needs the approval of the Senate, which is Republican dominated, so it probably won't get through. The Republicans will block the bill. But it is sparking a lot of controversy. In Indiana, required gender reassignment surgery. Nebraska and Maine does it case by case, so they have to apply to a board. Texas, Alabama, North Carolina, and Kentucky forces, so they're not allowed at all. Alaska, Connecticut, Georgia, Kansas, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin all allow school boards to make their own policy, and the rest all go by NCAA and International Olympic Committee guidelines. However, the Youth Sports Canada says that transgender women can compete without the need of hormone treatment, which has opened a can of worms for university athletics in Canada. All of this comes down to is a debate between inclusion versus competitive integrity. We certainly don't want to discriminate against people who feel different inside, but on the other side, what they think about themselves is irrelevant to their body's biological makeup. It is a frustrating conundrum for organizers of events to balance because ultimately their gender is different. Ultimately, gender is different than sex.
Like, do not bully people.
In Canada, there are three main parties, which are the Conservative Party, who is on the right, the Liberals, who are in the center, and the NDP, who are on the left. The Conservative Party is against transgender athletes, whereas the Liberal Party and the NDP is for the inclusion of transgender athletes. In the United States, the Republicans Party, which is right, is against transgender athletes, and the Democrats, who are left in the U.S., are for trans athletes, which is shown above with President Joe Biden's Equality Act.
Duh.
To conclude, transgender athletes are popping up more and more, and they are fighting for the right to compete in their desired sex category. Female-to-male athletes have little to no restrictions and no resistance due to the fact that they are putting themselves at a disadvantage. However, the fight still goes on for the men who transition to female due to their physical advantage. The inclusion of everyone, no matter the differences, have them be integrated into society would be great, and this would help trans people feel accepted for sure, and it would possibly encourage more trans people to take up sport. However, if biological men start flooding into women's sports, it kind of defeats the purpose of a women's category. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. All the links to the websites I used are down below in the description. All the music is here that I used. Quick little announcement. I was forced by parental request to unlist all my Geometry Dash videos, so if you want to take a look at that, just DM me. So yeah, thank you, and I'll leave you with some bloopers. United States. You're an athlete to the same degree as men do. On average, a male athlete will have anywhere between 20 and 30 nanomole. Fuck, I'm halfway through. Political standpoint.